Enfin, nous voici arrivés.
Ousmane Sembène's 1966 film, La Noire tells the story of Giovanna, a young Senegalese woman who moves from Dakar, Senegal to Antibes, France, to work for a rich French couple. In France, Giovanna hopes to continue her former nanny job and anticipates a cosmopolitan lifestyle. But from her arrival in Antibes, Giovanna experiences harsh treatment from the couple, who force her to work as a full servant. She becomes increasingly aware of her constrained and alienated situation and starts to question her life in France. One of the major spatial and architectural motifs of Le Noire is the grid. The grid represents the pre-planned, the rational, and the ideal. It is a manifestation of Plato's rational city form here in the earthly realm. The grid characterizes the ambitions of modernist French thought that alienate Giovanna. Against the backdrop of the grid, Giovanna faces estrangement and absurdity. Expecting to live a cosmopolitan lifestyle in France, Giovanna is confronted by the uncanny reality of being confined to domestic quarters. As the quote by Rosalind Krauss suggests, the grid silences the voice of the other, pitting the design of the colonizer against the existence of the colonized.
Descends, c'est un sacrilège! Veux-tu descendre? Ne reste pas là-haut! Descends, descends! Mais tu m'entends? Mais descends de là! Mais cours, cours!
J'étais toute contente.
In contrast to the regimentation and suppression of the grid that characterizes France in the French quarter of Dakar, the spatial layout of the Black District of Dakar is unrestricted and free-flowing, allowing for open communication and unhindered travel. Theoretical geographer Abraham Ackerman has described such spaces as urban voids. The urban void is a place of dereliction and fluctuation. If the grid attempts to order space systematically, urban void and decay arises the gap between the rational city form and the actual use of space. Ackerman theorizes urban decay in a positive light, arguing that it compels people to search for authenticity. If we understand urban void as the difference between premeditation and actuality, it becomes clear that the void has the power to reveal the grid's incompatibility with the realities of everyday life. This, in turn, opens up the space for narratives or discourses that the rational city form suppressed. In La Noire, the Black District of Dakar gives rise to the voice of the recently decolonized. The German word museal, museum-like, has unpleasant overtones. It describes objects to which the observer no longer has a vital relationship and which are in the process of dying. They owe their preservation more to historical respect than to the needs of the present. Museum and mausoleum are connected by more than phonetic association. Museums are the family sepulchres of works of art. The grid isn't the only symbol of Giovanna's alienation. For this, we also have an African tribal mask. We first encounter the mask when Giovanna buys it from a boy in her village to give to her employers on her first day of work. At this early juncture in the film, the mask symbolizes Giovanna's gratefulness to her white employers. Giovanna is eager to please the French family who hired her because she sees their money and approval as the road to freedom and luxury. Upon receiving the mask, the father of the family exclaims, "Looks like the real thing," and then adds the mask to his wall of African art. The irony here is palpable. For the Western art collector, the authenticity, that is, origin, of the mask is of the utmost importance. Yet in adding the mask to the art collection, he denudes the mask of its authentic function and context, sublimating it into the category of the exotic. The mask, stripped from its authentic setting, mirrors the alienation felt by Giovanna. On sterile white walls that recall those of a gallery or art museum, the tribal mask speaks to Western categorizations of art as opposed to the realities of African experience. 25 minutes into the film, Giovanna walks up to the mask and laments, "Back in Dakar, they must be saying, Giovanna is happy in France. She has a good life." In his essay, Ackerman also makes this connection between the museum and the grid, writing, quote, "In contrast to fossilized emblems of past time in a museum piece or a heritage site, or to the spatialized solemn form of the ideal city, urban decay is the spontaneous, inadvertent expression of urban change. Within contemporary city form, urban decay is also an ever-present ongoing veracity. The unplanned space, or the urban void, the unintended aftermath of a plan." In the end, the alienation experienced by Giovanna proves to be too much to handle. To escape her situation, but also to defy her oppressive employers, Giovanna takes her own life. In the tile of the bathtub and bathroom in which Giovanna commits suicide, the viewer is once again confronted by the symbol of her oppression, the grid. In the final scene of the film, the father of the family who employed Giovanna journeys back into the Black Quarter of Dakar to return Giovanna's mask and belongings to her family. In this moment, it becomes clear that Giovanna's suicide must have had a profound impact on the man. Reading her suicide as an act of defiance against post-colonial oppression, the suicide alerts the man to the alienation that he and his wife inflicted upon Giovanna. The mask, a symbol of Giovanna's estrangement, no longer seems so authentic hanging on his museal walls. If we understand the Black Quarter of Dakar as an urban void that compels us to search for authenticity, we may read the French man's act of reparation as a search for truth. Seeking to clear his conscience and to do for the mask what he can no longer do for Giovanna, the man returns the mask to its authentic context, symbolically returning Giovanna to her home and rescuing her from her alienation. When the French man meets Giovanna's mother and brother, he offers them money as payment for Giovanna's services. The subtext here, however, is that the man is trying to compensate in cash for Giovanna's suicide. Understanding this subtext, Giovanna's mother and brother refuse the cash payment, leaving the man on his own. In his search for authenticity, the French man is shocked to find that his money is worthless. Money may be able to buy an authentic tribal mask at auction, but it cannot compensate for the atrocities of colonialism. Following the refusal of the cash reparation, the boy whom Giovanna originally bought the mask from puts the mask over his face and follows the French man off of the property. The boy, still wearing the mask, pursues the man all the way through the Black District until he reaches his car and drives away. In this scene especially, we see the freedom of movement afforded by the urban void. The man continuously turns his head around to see the boy following him, but he never stops. He is afraid. The French man began his journey believing that he would be able to buy good conscience, but upon his arrival it becomes clear that the repercussions of his actions, i.e., the repercussions of colonialism, cannot be assuaged so easily. Upon the mask's return to its authentic context, the mask is resignified as a weapon against the alienating forces of colonialism, literally driving the colonizer out of the home of the colonized. Although Giovanna's mother did not accept his money, the man's search for authenticity is affirmed. Had the French man known that the authentication of the mask would result in his own alienation, he might have settled in keeping the mask on his wall. As it turns out, the authenticity abhorred by the urban void manifests itself as the invalidation of the white man's search for authenticity.